Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick. We're here to continue our expectations series today. Today, we're talking about Keaton Mitchell and Patrick Queen. Again, always one offensive player, one defensive player. Joining me to do this is Brandon Croxton. Brandon, how you doing?
I'm doing well, Ken. Always good to talk to you. Always have fun with these.
This has been a lot of fun, Brandon, and we've just met maybe 3 months ago, something like that, and you've been on about 4 or 5 shows already, and
Yeah,
just been terrific doing these with you.
yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, it hasn't been a long time, but yeah, I've been listening to the show for a long time, so it feels like I've known you for years.
Well, it's nice to say. So let's jump in right about with Keaton Mitchell. We start East Carolina grad, 5'8", 179. The big thing that really made him stand out and was part of my pre-draft review of the running backs, 437 speed. I think that was the number that jumped off the page at everybody. A nice 38-inch vert and a 10.6 broad, so he has good jumps. He's also only 21 and a half now, I guess. Most of the running backs in this draft and in every draft tend to be on the younger side, where linemen tend to be a little older.
Yeah, that's that 437 speed is what jumped out to me as well. He's definitely a smaller back. 180 pounds is very light for a running back. You're not expecting probably a lot of power runs between the guards at that frame, but he's very fast. He can definitely attack the corner, get to the edge very well with that speed, and he does have some quickness as well. So it's it's something exciting to see. Potential you break out on the edge, and he could take it 80 yards pretty easily.
Yeah, massive career at ECU as a junior. He had 201 carries for 1,452 yards. That was over 7 yards per carry. He also had 60 catches in his career for 7.8 yards per target. Now, that's a pretty good total for a running back. Running backs don't pile up yards per target numbers like receivers do. They tend to be a little shorter, a lot of yards behind the line of scrimmage. They oftentimes their yak total will exceed their yardage total, meaning they have a negative average depth of reception. But Mitchell, a multi-threat guy on the surface, at least in terms of being some option as a receiver.
Yeah, yeah. He's with that speed. You definitely want to get a guy like that in space. Route running should be something that they should be working on for him, and getting him out in space to just get that speed out there. I was surprised he was an undrafted free agent. I mean, he was probably
Very surprising.
worth a fifth round pick. I would have guessed, but yeah. He's one of those surprising falls out of the draft, and hopefully that's to the Ravens' benefit.
Yeah, I was exceptionally surprised as well. He is the son of Anthony Mitchell, who, if you don't remember that name in Ravens history, you probably ought to. Anthony Mitchell is the man who returned the 90-yard blocked field goal in the 2000 Tennessee playoff win. So they went to Tennessee. It's the only game at all. The Ravens were challenged during the regular season with the game 10-10. I think it was about 13 minutes left in the fourth quarter. The Tennessee lined up for a field goal to try and take the lead. It looked like it was very, very difficult for the Ravens to move the ball. That would have been an enormous score in the game. Instead of 3 points for Tennessee, Keith Washington blocks the football. It goes straight up in the air. Anthony Mitchell collected it after several Ravens are waving their hands to let it go, because a blocked field goal is like a punt when it goes beyond the line of scrimmage in terms of the liveness of the ball. So if you fumble it or you touch it, the other team can recover it if you do. But anyway, he caught it in the air, took it up the right sideline. The Ravens remarkably transitioned to blockers just like that after he caught the ball, which is a darn good thing, because they needed a good block on Wycheck to spring him for the entire distance. And that was Anthony Mitchell's big moment as a Raven, and it was frankly the biggest play in Ravens history in terms of their championship winning probability until the Mile High Miracle.
Yeah, I can remember that play, him just snatching that ball out of the air and just taking off down the sideline, and you saw the block set up, and he was gone. I think he had one guy to beat, and he cut back over the
Hmm.
middle of the field and took it the distance. And yeah, I remember that game fondly.
Yeah,
You
great.
know, yeah. Hmm.
Gr- Great run for sure. And of course, when you're the field goal kicking team and the fastest guy on the defense gets the ball in his hand, it's an uh-oh situation right away. You have
Hmm.
you played on some field goal block or on the wing or anything on the field
I
goal team?
I played defensive line on field goal block.
Hmm.
Yeah, I never played on the field goal block team, the field goal team, but yeah, block, yeah, pushing to try and block a field goal. I've done a few times. Yeah.
All right. All right. Well,
Mhm.
very good. Anyway, I'm sure Anthony extremely proud. His son looks like a tremendous athlete. One of the things that I noticed about Keaton that made him very intriguing a player is that he really seems to um, do a very good job reading opposing leverage. And we talk about this with Lamar Jackson a lot. You know, there are other players in the NFL who are every bit as fast as Lamar Jackson. In fact, Keaton Mitchell is substantially faster, I would say, than Lamar Jackson, even though there was some bogus 4:34 time ascribed to Jackson at some point, or unverified,
Mhm.
we'll call it.
Mhm.
What makes Jackson amazing is not his raw, linear speed. It's his ability to make people miss and ability to throw a little wiggle on a defender, know exactly when he's got him timed up, and then make it break his ankles and make him miss at that point. Always see Lamar kind of running in third gear to that end.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I think you say it best. Like he is. I kind of equate it to his ability to just see the lane that isn't quite there. I almost consider it like Magic Johnson with a pass. Like he can see defenders moving and can just see the lane when it's not there and it's not obvious to anybody else. And Magic could zip that ball in there. Lamar can stop on a dime and you know go go left or go right and just find that hole where it wasn't originally, and it's something very special to see.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Anyway, I saw a fair amount of that in level two and level three. A lot of wiggle in Keaton Mitchell's game in terms of making defenders miss, and a leverage reader there that I think uh, Ravens fans will be very excited to see. I mean, Justice Hill, just about as fast as Keaton Mitchell, maybe a little bit slower, or he was anyway at one time. I think maybe he's substantially faster. Mitchell would be substantially faster now. But the other thing about Mitchell's game was that very patient runner in the backfield. So you see a little bit of this Le'Veon Bell type running where he waits
Hmm.
for a lane to open, waits for things to set up. And I think he does a very good job of getting rewarded for that when he gets into that second and third level.
Yeah, I think his patient style is, it really much reminds you of Le'Veon Bell, except he just has a much bigger burst and acceleration and long speed than Le'Veon probably ever did. Um, and so the hope is if he could be half the player Le'Veon Bell is, they got to steal.
Oh
But
yeah,
yeah, yeah, like Le'Veon Bell is a good comp as far as his running style, at least. Yeah.
definitely. The Ravens have lacked the last couple of years. They've gone for a group of elder statesmen in terms of the running backs when they've had to fill voids on the roster. And they really haven't had a player like Mitchell. Who was the guy they had? Tyson Williams, um, who was a speedier back who could really hit the outside and run out a sidecar through a mesh point and then threaten the edge to clear space for Lamar in the middle of the field or actually take the ball himself and make a big play. But Keaton Mitchell seems like that kind of guy. And one of the real questions is going to be, can he figure out the mesh point as a runner?
Right. I think that's the biggest challenge for any young running back, especially if they didn't come out of college, is trusting Lamar to because Lamar likes to hold on to that ball for a long time. So being able to hold the ball without, squeezing it too hard or too soft that he drops it is going to be a challenge, and it's going to be a learning adjustment for him.
Yeah, it's been definitely been the cause of some fumbles. Even some good backs have had trouble with it in their first years working with Lamar. And I'm thinking specifically of Gus Edwards is a guy who the ball ended up on the ground a fair amount in 2018 as part of Lamar's large fumble total that year. But the only guy who's ever really been fantastic with that mesh point is Mark Ingram, who just you could wait as long as you wanted to pull it. And he said, you take as long as you want, just pull it hard when you need to do it. Make sure it comes out hard. And so hopefully Mitchell, that's something he does. In a lot of ways, Mitchell might be the most important back entering camp. The Ravens don't have anyone signed for 2024 at all. Not true. Justice Hill is signed for 2 years, so he'll be around. But Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins are not.
Right.
What do you make out of the long-term need for a player like Mitchell?
Yeah, that was part of one of my great season thoughts is for him to become a good option as a split carry back for 24 and beyond. The Ravens are going. They have to be looking both for a veteran running back and probably draft a running back next year because all they have is Justice Hill under contract. So Mitchell has an opportunity to, not only make the team, but be on the team for a couple of years if he can show that he can handle the mesh point, be that outside edge threat that they need when they, threaten the outside with him and shoot Lamar up the middle and vice versa. So, yeah, he's got an opportunity to, do some things next year, and the Ravens are definitely going to give him a long look and try to hold on to him if he really shows that he can be a decent back.
Are you at all intrigued by how Monken might use a player like Mitchell, who seems to have, not all the normal running back traits, with one of the ones being decidedly missing is he's really too small to be an effective pass blocker. And that showed up in college a lot, is that he does not really seem to have the chops for that. And that is something you typically want in on a third down back. What do you think about Monken's usage of him?
Yeah. So Monken's talked about he wants to challenge a defense vertically and horizontally. I think he said something like he wants to make the defense defend every blade of grass or something like that. But which means he needs to be able to challenge a defense horizontally and vertically. Roman was very good at challenging a team horizontally with the running game. That's something that I'm sure the Ravens don't want to get rid of. They don't want to throw that in the trash can. But a guy like Mitchell who can get to the outside is somebody that is a threat. Defenses fear speed, and speed is something they don't mind giving up a 4-yard play. They don't want to give up a 40-yard play. And a guy like Mitchell can get a 40-yard play in a hurry if one person misses and with that speed. So that's something that defense will definitely pay attention to.
And the Ravens are certainly looking to take advantage of that sort of thing. See, I was going to throw my own 2 cents in, but I wanted to leave over what you had to do with it first. But it seems like sidecar, not pistol, is the natural place for a guy like him if you want to naturally stretch the field in one direction. Pistol is more of a power back option, where then Lamar becomes the outside threat if you're going to mesh and pull that ball potentially. But the other thing I'm intrigued with Mitchell is that he could be used as a gadget player. Generally, you want a speed guy for that. You probably don't want to take your top receiving option out of the play with orbit motion or even jet motion if you can help it by using a Zay Flowers, say there. That would be kind of a shame if you lost some of the vertical stretching of the field because you wanted to stretch the field horizontally with your best wide receiver. But the other thing I'm thinking is that you could put him in a pony situation, or you can put him in as the single back, flex him out wide, have him orbit back around, or have him jet in through the backfield, and then you get a lot of that potential for gadgetry that they got out of a player like Devin Duvernay the last couple of years.
Yeah, exactly. He, like you were saying, he struggles in pass protection. So a traditional third down back, he's probably not in the cards for him.
Mm-hmm.
So, but being able to get a guy like that who's got good agility and good speed, getting him on screens, getting him on jet sweeps, things like that. The more ways you can get him in space, the more ways you can get him in non-conventional ways is a great way to threaten the defense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you might get a one-on-one matchup against a linebacker, which you're probably always looking for with a player like this. Yeah, potentially very exciting. Look back at his college career a little bit. There are some context issues with his stats. Now, he piled up great total stats, but he did have more of his great games against lesser teams. And the one exception was Cincinnati, where he always pretty much ran well against him. And the Bearcats, of course, been a powerful team the last few years.
Okay. I didn't really look too much at, how he dominated. So, yeah.
That's okay. I expected to be drafted too. I'm looking through my notes and you've hit on some of these items already. If you're trying to figure out what you do with Keaton Mitchell, there is kind of a tripwire waiting for the Ravens. So they get to the end of camp, and assuming that there's no holdout and there's no injury, and you have J.K. Dobbins. I don't think he's really planning to hold out, but he is unhappy, no doubt, not having an extension, and I don't think. Just looking at the Ravens cap space and everything that's going on, I don't think J.K. Dobbins is going to get an extension that he wants from the Baltimore Ravens. I think he's probably going to have to wait until the end of the year and cash in, and he should cash in very well with whoever he's playing for in 24. But assuming everybody is still healthy, depth holds up, and the I'll call them the big three because Justice Hill played a fair amount of third down last year, but those guys are all ready to go. What do you do with Keaton Mitchell? Because there's probably, I'm thinking, not room for a fourth back on the roster.
Yeah, I think Justice Hill is his main competition to be on the active 53 for the year. You said Justice Hill is he's under contract for the next 2 years.
2 years, yep.
If they could if he shows that he could be at least as good as Justice is on special teams, and certainly a reset essentially with him being on the team for 4 years of control would be a better option for this year. If he can beat out Justice Hill. Otherwise, I would be surprised if he's not on the practice squad at least, with a couple of elevations here and there, depending on injury situation or matchups.
Right. Yeah. That's certainly possible. I guess the fear I was kind of leading to was that, and I do think that's probably where he ends up, by the way. So I think you're right, but that you run the risk every week, and an increasing risk every week, that a kind of a priority UDFA like Mitchell, particularly if he does anything in an elevation, for example, becomes a target for another team as their depth starts to degrade. So, I don't think he's going to last till, say, November on the practice squad without being poached. So it may be a situation where you have to somehow get him onto the roster. They do have one other backdoor they can use with those designated to return, IR, DTR. They don't have to designate who's returning, but they could get him onto the roster initially if he has a minor injury during camp, and then bring him back anytime after week 4. So he effectively stays on the roster as an available player for the Ravens. That way, he can't practice if that's the case until 3 weeks before, but he could be made available in that way. So there are some tricks the Ravens could play if they really, really like him. But I think the moment he breaks off a couple of really big runs in a preseason game, the targeting will get more intense from other teams in the NFL.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the Ravens, I think probably all the other 31 teams always look at the Ravens what their practice squad is situation is like, because I think we every year we probably get one or two of our guys poached, to go on active rosters. So yeah, it's definitely a possibility. So you're right. Like he may end up, you know, getting a hangnail and ending up on IR for part of the to start the season or something like that. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It's easy to see that kind of thing as being a reasonable plan anyway. Okay, so now let's put you in the shoes of Anthony Mitchell right now. So you've been to an NFL camp and you've obviously had experience playing college ball. What do you try and tell your son, Keaton Mitchell, about how he should be, what he should try and do as a first year player in Ravens camp, in dealing with the coaches, in making himself at home and be seen in that environment?
Um, the probably the two most important words for him are yes, coach. If the coach asks them to, yeah, you know, like I got the advice when I was getting married. The two most
Yes.
important words are yes, dear.
Yep.
For him should be yes, coach. If they want to try him at kick return or punt returner, say yes, coach. If you want to he needs to be at the front of the line for every special teams practice and every special teams unit. Be at the front of the line, be willing to do in whatever position they ask, that and just show growth and show that you're not making the same mistakes over and over. Those are the things that really get you in the doghouses if you miss the wrong blocking assignment, or you run you're putting the ball on the ground with the mesh point or something like that. You can make one mistake, but don't make that same mistake over and over.
All right. All right. Well, good advice, I think, probably for anyone. Tell us, in terms of a good season, what does that look like to you? And I'll remind folks, I'm using 60th and 80th percentile. The guests use whatever they want. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about, how you would describe this qualitatively. But what's a good and a great season?
Yeah, I would say that, number one would be great to either make the team right in week one, or be on the practice squad and get a couple elevations for special teams needs. He definitely wants to carve out a role on all four special teams units: kick return, punt return, kickoff, punt team. Tried if it's gunner or whatever, kick returner. Figure out where your best spot is on all of the units, and try to make yourself show enough in the preseason that you get a couple of carries during the season on the regular offense. J.K. and Gus are going to take the bulk of the carries, and Harbaugh, he prefers veterans over rookies, so Justice Hill will be, the backup behind them most likely. But if he's able to get a couple of carries here and there, I think that would be a good season for him.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that Justice Hill had 49 carries last year. I would have guessed it was less than that, just off the top of my head, because the typical game, I'd say, the third running back often gets about 2 carries for the Ravens, might be.
Right,
So I guess
right.
it might have been slightly more than that this year. I was very similar on a good season. I said avoid practice mistakes to maintain the number 4 spot on the running back total. Hopefully nobody else comes in and takes that from him, and hopefully the Ravens don't feel obligated at the end of camp to go out and poach somebody else's practice squad, particularly if there's an injury or an opening in the top 3 spots, that they don't go look outside the organization for that guy, and
Yeah,
that it's Mitchell, obviously.
yeah,
Part of the discussion as a backup kick and punt return player, I think we see at practice they have about 6 or 7 guys doing each of those things. The thing I look for a kick or punt returner is how well do they get under the ball? So how well do they track it, get under it? How do they catch it? And how do they explode out of the catch? So the first is really a case of how quickly are they set up, and the second one, how quickly do they explode out of catching the ball? And obviously, if you fumble, you get a bad score, on the probably on both. But anyway, it's something I'd look for. He has no history in college, I don't believe, in one of those two. Is either kick returning or punt returning that he'd never done, but doesn't mean that at the pro level he's not going to be somebody they look to for that. I think like you said, makes the practice squad, gets some elevations when injuries inevitably strike. Running backs have a lot of nagging 1 and 2 week injuries, so there's going to be opportunities. If he's the top guy on the practice squad, he should get playing time, and does nothing to hurt his 2024 prospects. I think I'm actually setting the bar pretty low. Now, it could just be cut. The Ravens could like somebody else on another team better, and that makes up a lot of that 60% that is below where I'm setting this bar.
Yeah, no, I agree with all of that. It's exactly right. Yeah.
How about a great season?
All right, so I said to make the team out of training camp and be active as a special teamer all season, and to be able to be that third running back, actually beat out Justice Hill for carries and be the third running back on the depth chart. And that'll obviously get him some touches in the offense. But I think a great season would be to just show enough in practice and games that he can be a very good split carry option for 24 and beyond.
Okay, so you're saying be the number 2 back in 24 and beyond if you're talking about split carries, or do you mean even a part of a 3-headed monster there?
Either a split carry or 3-headed monster in 24. Yeah.
Okay. All right, I think that's good. I said makes the team out of camp due to injury or holdout. I think those are his best chances to make it, which obviously would not be good for the Ravens if any of their top 3 guys goes down. Hill, an important special teams player, and the other 2 obviously very important to the offense. I think a lot of his success falls to Monken. I think Monken finds a role for him in the offense, which minimizes his pass blocking deficiencies. So he may not get to play third down, or he may, and he's just somewhere else on the field. You have another running back in there. Keaton Mitchell is it's a weird wide receiver situation, like Washington has been playing the last several years with a pony backfield. And that doesn't have to happen on third down. That could happen on first or second down as well, where you just throw a wrinkle, you throw 2 running backs at them, allow them to make their choice about how they deploy their defense. And some people still don't know this, but the defense deploys second. It's kind of like being the home team in hockey after on a face-off. You get to put your guys out there second. And that's, in theory, is an advantage. And one of the things offensive coordinators need to do to combat that is to have an ambiguous offensive package of your 5 eligible receivers that doesn't give everything away to the defensive coordinator. And so this is something that is an option. I mean, if Monken can find some uses for Mitchell in this way, I think it serves multiple purposes. First of all, they get advantages on that play. Second of all, if they have a little bit of success with Mitchell and they have that on tape, that will drive opposing advanced scouts absolutely nuts in trying to figure out how to game plan for the Ravens.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Having that speed between him and Lamar, that could really be a deadly combo in a sidecar if they're able to get that going.
So Baltimore certainly has had some love for small backs. The guy from when we were kids, and you went to Gilman. I don't know if you grew up in Baltimore before that or whatnot, but Joe Washington, when I was a kid, that might be slightly before you, or was he still with the Redskins at that point?
I think he was with Washington. Okay. I definitely remember the team. I know he played for the Colts. I don't know exactly. So to be honest with you, my only memory of the Colts is them leaving in the Mayflower truck. So I don't remember their players back then. Yeah.
So yeah, Joe Washington had his big game in 1978. The Colts had been outscored 80-0 in their first 2 games. And Joe Washington was with the team. He was their primary running back in the third game at New England. A horrible rainy night, and the Colts won 34-27. And Joe Washington did it all, including returning. I think he ran for a touchdown, caught a touchdown, and returned a kickoff for a touchdown for the winning score with a couple of minutes left. and that was really a remarkable thing. But Joe Washington, definitely a shorter guy, lots of speed. They used him in all kinds of different ways. He had a lot of long downfield opportunities as a receiver too, which is something, we'd love to see Monken figure out for him. But Dave Meggett would be the slightly more recent guy for Giants fans out there. Who
I remember Dave Meggett. Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
So last thing I had for a great season for him would be to score a touchdown that rivals in significance to his dad's touchdown in the 2000 playoff run. So if he does that, I think that guarantees a spot on the roster for 24.
So the two plays in Ravens history, the Mile High Miracle and his dad's touchdown, are pretty much the only ones that meet that criteria. But that's not too extreme or anything. But appreciate it, Brandon. That would really be cool if he could etch his name into Ravens history in a similar way.
Yeah.
So why don't we talk about move on? Talk about Patrick Queen a little bit. He's entering his fourth season, and amazingly, he won't turn 24 until next month.
Yeah, there's a lot of good and a lot of bad to talk about with Patrick Queen in his first couple of seasons. I think a couple of the good things that you can talk about are he was able to make a lot of splash plays in his first couple of seasons with sacks and interceptions, forced fumbles, and he actually had 19 tackles for losses in his first couple of seasons. So, there's a lot of bad that goes in those first couple of seasons, but there was some good as well. And to kind of put it in comparison, Ray Lewis only in his last 10 seasons only had one season of 10 tackles for losses. And Ray Lewis had 6 All-Pros and 1 Defensive Player of the Year his last 10 years. Mm-hmm. And Patrick Queen has never had less than 9 tackles for losses in any of his first 3 seasons. So there is some good, although there was a lot of bad in his first couple of years.
Consistently improving player over these 3 years he's been there, and there's so many things about Patrick Queen that are both frustrating and they're positive. But I'll start with this: is that they drafted him obviously very young. I think he was still 20, but he might have just turned 21. No, he would have been still 20, right? Because it would have been May. So he's 23 now. Would have been 3 years ago.
He turned 21 either during the season or right at the beginning of the season.
August, yeah. So,
okay.
So anyway, they kind of knew there was a problem there. He hadn't played a lot of time at inside linebacker. He had already some great highlights, some splash plays at LSU, but probably should have expected it to be a learning curve. The second thing about the Patrick Queen draft was that it was at the time, the high water mark, I'll call it, for over draft capitalizing Mike linebackers who were, predicted to wear the green dot. And that was certainly where they thought he was headed at the time. Never came to fruition because just Chuck Clark has had it the entire time he's been here. But the thought was that they had the 2 Devons were drafted the year before, Devin Bush and Devin White of Tampa Bay. Mm-hmm. Devin Bush didn't even get offered a 5th-year contract, much like Queen is, and Devin White did get an extension from Tampa Bay. I don't know if they're all that thrilled about the way that's worked out, but he did get an extension. But Queen has definitely had an upward trajectory through his 3-year career to date.
Yeah, I've always kind of been in the idea for drafting middle linebackers in the first round. Don't do it unless you think they're going to be a special player. If they're don't draft, like you said, Devin Bush, Devin White, or Patrick Queen in the first round, but draft a Ray Lewis or a C.J. Mosley or a,
Do you have a
a
special
Bobby Wagner.
machine that you can pass these players through to determine if they're that guy before you draft them? Because
Uh,
that would really be the trick.
yeah,
Just step in
yeah, I
here.
wish, I wish you could, you could definitely tell, but
Yeah.
I mean, like a better, I'd say if you think they have a better than 50% chance of being a multi-time All-Pro or Pro Bowl player, if that's the, you know,
That's
the line for me. Yeah.
fair enough. And the Ravens certainly have had a lot of success in finding UDFA talent at that inside
Hmm.
linebacker position, which would tell you that they probably can go cheap. And then if you look back just to the year before Queen arrived, so Queen was drafted in 2020. What did the Ravens do in 2019? They flushed the toilet on the guys they had at inside linebacker. Owasso started the season with a green dot. They relegated him to a part-time will, that was where he had really had success with the Ravens previously. Um, uh, Young was traded for Marcus Peters. So
Yep. Hmm.
they really decided what they had there at inside linebacker was not sufficient, and then they went out and got LJ Fort, and they went out and got Josh Bynes, and those two guys were fantastic in the defense.
Hmm.
And night and day switch in terms of the quality of play there. And that 2019 team, they were a great offense, one of the greatest offenses of all time, but they were a very fine defense as well. They're one of the it's hard to say if they're one of the best Ravens units of all time because that's a very deep group. But they were in the top half, I would say, of Ravens defenses ever.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and yeah, Bynes and Ford really came in and put, put the elevated that defense. Even though as individual players, they're probably below average linebackers. They made the whole entire defense better
Yeah.
for whatever reason. It was very it's weird to see that type of improvement off of just kind of modest players.
Yeah, one of the things I always say that I think it showed is that how much more important instincts are than raw speed. And I forget because I used to quote it a lot of just what Josh Bynes' 40 time was. It was like 484 or something like that. I mean, and it was a decade ago that he ran that. So he's not that fast anymore. But the guy had much better instincts than that, and he knew where the football was going, and did a good job with that. And that's why he hung around the league as long as he did. But Fort was a really good pass coverage guy. And he handled depth of drop really well. He understood what was going on between level 2 and level 3 better than any linebacker that the Ravens had between CJ Mosley and Roquan. So that's a fairly long stretch to be the best pass defending inside linebacker. And it's just those two. It was a remarkable season of rebuilding the defense. With Peters and the two nose tackles and everything they did that year to rebuild that was fairly remarkable. But anyway, can't count on that every year.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Big news for Patrick Queen this offseason. The fifth-year option was declined. So the Ravens, are been talking about a willingness to negotiate a long-term deal. I think that's probably legitimate, but I think they want, a long-term deal at the price they have in mind. And Queen, of course, is going to want a long-term deal at the price he has in mind. And there should be with a year of play here to go, some divisible benefit on the table so that Queen avoids that injury risk and the Ravens get a slightly better bargain than they would if they paid him a year from now.
Sure. Yeah, like I wonder how serious any kind of negotiations are between Queen and the Ravens. Just because you're paying Roquan 20 million a year
Mm-hmm.
and you're paying Lamar 52, that's a lot of money. And I can't say that Queen is a player that's proven himself to be invaluable to the team at this point. You know, his play, especially in the second half of last year when Roquan got here, went up in an even greater level than at the beginning of the year, where we saw an improvement from him. But I can't say that he has. It would be best in a team building situation to be paying him probably anywhere close to what he probably wants.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I guess we'll see. But yeah,
I feel similarly about that. That there's only so much they can put in there, and as every contract right now is going to be looked at with a great degree of scrutiny. And the big three that I'm aware of, and there's probably more guys than that, who really want extensions now, have been a little bit vocal about it, are Kevin Zeitler, Patrick Queen, and J.K. Dobbins. And there just is not room to pay everybody. I mean, they have the organization has
hmm
most of the cornerstone contracts, if not all, that they can really afford right now. If you look at we had Brad Spielberger from PFF on a couple of days ago. So that show may have already posted. Go back and listen to it, folks out there. He was terrific, by the way, in terms of explaining a methodology for looking at 3-year cap health. And it looks at the quality of the player, also who's going to be a free agent and whatnot. A couple of things really stood out. And one is that the Ravens are in terrible position in terms of their 3-year cap health. 27th out of 32 teams by one metric. And the other is that they have a tremendous amount of free agents coming to the end of the line, specifically in 2023, who will be free agents before the 24 season that are going to be leaving the team. And replacing those guys is going to be a bear. I mean, this is a year where you really wish the Ravens had 12 draft picks. And unfortunately, it'd probably be 25 that they have a bunch of draft picks from losing a bunch of compensatory players this time around.
right, yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree. That they have to be really smart with who they pay and who they don't, and it's going to be tough for them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I do think they'll point to each other and say Zeitler. I don't see how they're going to pay Zeitler because he's a quality player, but again, I think at the end of his career like this, you play the game of hearts ever?
No,
Never played
sorry.
it. Okay, so it's fairly popular game. Some people know it, some people don't. But each holding each heart at the end of the game is worth -1 point, and holding the Queen of Spades is worth -13 points. So sometimes this analogy, I'm sure, is lost on people, but you really don't want to get caught holding the Queen of Spades, is how I put it, with free agent contracts at the end of players' careers, because they often end with a pay for two, play for one deal. So if you have a
Right.
you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, sure. I think because Yonda was kind of like that
Exactly. Yeah.
at the end of his season. Yeah.
And
hmm
and Mason and Reed before him. Reed had several 2-year deals negotiated at the end of his career consecutively, and not one after the other, but they're overlapping twos, like Lego pieces. So they're, and with Mason, some of the same things. So, you don't want to get caught in that situation. Zeitler still has some career runway left, I think, which is good. Good for him. Good for the Ravens. That makes this a kind of a prove it year for him. Now, no
hmm
12th year veteran wants a prove it year, but on the other hand, it's kind of a good thing for the Ravens. If he has a big year, the Ravens will get a comp pick probably for him, and not that they're going to be fairly flush or up against the maximum of 4 comp picks, but they should get some value for him, and they stand a much better chance, maybe more importantly, to just get a big year out of him this year.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And then they have a few guard prospects that
Mm-hmm.
should be able to fill in and at least be average guys. They they got Mal
Salah.
Male,
Yeah.
Sala, yeah, and they also got Voorhees.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully he can come in, step in, and be a decent guard for him right at the beginning of the year next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited, by the way, about that. And I don't mind going down this rabbit hole a little bit, even though we're talking about Patrick Queen. But the Ravens have a tremendous record of finding value in distressed guards and interior offensive linemen in particular. Occasionally a tackle. Rick Wagner falls into this category, but in
hmm
particular, it's interior offensive linemen where they unlock the value that other teams couldn't. And they have got a collection of guys right now who might all fit that category. So Salah, could be fast tracked. I think he probably has some problems right now. I'd say strength might be the biggest issue. He's got all the size you would want, but as far as functional strength goes, that was a problem when I first looked at him after the draft. In terms of they have John Simpson, who is built exactly how you would put together a guard if you were drawing him. But on the other hand, he has had 17 penalties in 1,545 NFL snaps, more than 1% of the plays. And you played on the defensive line, so if you encroach and you run into the other guy's thing, it's a less important penalty than an offsides penalty, for example, because encroachment is a pre-snap foul that's an automatic 5 yards.
Yeah, plays dead. It's 5 yard loss. Yeah, but if you go offsides and your teammate gets a sack, or even you get a sack, that sack is then nullified.
Or looking at the other way, the quarterback says free play.
Give up a 50-yard, get a 50-yard play, then they get a 50-yard play. So yeah.
So anyway, offensive line, the theory is the same. You don't want to give the defense those options to decline your penalties. Well, Simpson's penalties: 2 false starts, 13 offensive holding, and 2 personal fouls. That is a really, really bad set of penalties there. So
that's rough.
So, but Simpson is a guy that if they find a lot of that is technique based, and they probably already think that's the case if they sign them at all, and it's not just he's getting beat all the time, and that's why these penalties are occurring. I don't think they'd have signed him last year if they didn't think there was a way to fix that. So they probably believe in their own coaching and hopefully get that. And then Ben Cleveland, of course, they haven't figured out how to fix him, but he's their own guy. And I know there's probably some lingering frustration between in the way of how he showed up for camp. But I mean, he's their own guy too. He's their own son. Let's fix that guy.
Get him. Get him out on the field. Yeah, Joe D. He's one of the best, and he's got some work to do on some of these guys to get them ready for next year and this year too.
Very much so. And with the left tackle situation being what it is, the guy who is most intriguing to me is probably Simpson, because he has arm length over 34 inches, and I know he struggled a lot in terms of penalties. If you clean that up, and it's not just a case of him getting beat, it's maybe something about outside the frame or his line mates or lack of continuity of this. But if he might be a guy who could fill in on an emergency basis at left tackle. The Ravens do not really have that on the roster right now. Patrick McCary is a long step down from Ronnie Stanley in terms of who you want at that position.
Right, exactly. Yeah, this is a huge year for Stanley to see where he is long term, because I think he could potentially be gone after 24, or they could extend him and he could be a Raven for the rest of his career. So, yeah.
And 23, actually, after 23, the option is there to cut him. They have about $8.3 million in savings before 24. So he could be cut. And I think the only way it happens is if he has one of these years where he's having trouble getting on the field on a regular basis. If the injury comes back, or it's the effects linger, or he's just not the same player he was. He's still a very good pass blocker. He's a completely different run blocker than he was when he was really at the top of his game. And honestly, if he could maintain that, I'd say you at least keep him for one more year at that level, because the savings is not enough to go out and rebuild the left tackle position. But whenever they decide to do it, it's an enormous commitment of draft capital, probably, or an enormous signing to go out and get that guy. So you gulp down hard when you have to do it.
Yeah, left tackles don't grow on trees, and he's a good one. So you definitely want to try to keep him for the rest of his career, or at least most of it. And you can really see the difference in the offense when he plays and when he doesn't. I mean, just this past year, the games that he played in, you could see, more efficiency. They could move the ball better. And when he wasn't out on the field, for the other games, you saw the offense struggle. So he's a left tackle is probably the second most important position on the offense, and when he's on there, he is he's an impactful player.
Yeah, absolutely. So we would talk more deeply about Ronnie Stanley, but we're going to get back to Patrick Queen here for a moment. So, several different things. I really want to talk about this because I've often been, fairly critical of Patrick Queen's play. I think that's fair to say. But he took a big step forward in coverage. 7.6 yards per target doesn't look great on paper. A 96.3 opposing passer rating, but 2 interceptions, 2 TDs. Didn't give up as many big plays as Roquan did, actually. And he it's an area that he definitely took a step forward in 2022, and an area which has been just causing me to throw my arms up in the air, and honestly causing a lot of his teammates to go over to him after the play and make funny gestures to him, during his first couple of years.
Yeah. Last year, really, everything got better. I think his first couple of years, he really lacked the physicality to play middle linebacker. He, like, I think the most basic thing a middle linebacker can do is read a run play, get off your block, and tackle the running back for 3 yards or less. And there were times he can't get off blocks. There were times where he'd hit the running back in the hole, and the running back would drag him, a couple more, 2 or 3 more yards. He'd miss tackles. He would, all of it was really, a physicality issue. He's a smaller running linebacker. I think he was 220 pounds or something like that coming out of college, I think, and that's pretty undersized. And to go up against guards that are 320, 330 pounds and hit a running back that's coming on a full head of speed is just that's really tough, and he really kind of lacked that physicality. But he always showed the knack for making big plays. He could get in the backfield. He could knife in. I mean, I think that was one of the more consistent things. Once a game, he could knife into the backfield right at the snap and tackle the running back for a 4-yard loss, or maybe he misses the tackle, but he disrupts
Turns
the play
him around,
enough that another teammate, makes the stop for a loss, and he could get sacks. And I mean, the big plays he could make, but just the basic, assignments of a linebacker, he was just not good at. And you've talked plenty about him in coverage, and the basics of the position just weren't. He just wasn't good enough at.
Yeah, it definitely has taken a long time to click. I think that he improved this last year. Those 2 interceptions were really good, and he had additional chances for interceptions that he didn't collect. On one hand, that's bad that he's not converting his opportunities. You want to see a high percentage of conversion of your PDs always. On the other hand, he's in the right spot. That's a big change in terms of what's going on, and you have to applaud that. Pick 6 right up the right sideline versus one team, and I'm forgetting who it was, but it was
New England.
Yeah, I was going to say early in the season.
Yeah, on the end zone. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it was an easy pick 6. It would have been
95.
He would have had 95 yards. Who knows if somebody might have caught him, but he would have gone a long way, and he just dropped that. But one thing that I do give him credit for, there was the game against Cincinnati. He this goes to his film study. He saw something that Cincinnati was doing, some formation or something that he was doing, and right before the play, he immediately barked to the other linebackers. He's made a gesture like move this way, and he moved to his right, and and Joe Burrow threw an interception right into his chest. And you love to see that play, because that play was made on a Wednesday night or a Thursday night, and while he's looking at tape, and not just kind of a whim on Sunday night.
That's really a great point. I don't know if I completely relate it to film study in his case. It actually might be being on the practice field with Joe Burrow in college, where he lives. So it might have been on a Tuesday morning or Tuesday afternoon kind of thing but anyway, it was a great play. And it's the kind of thing that linebackers, when they start to pick up tendencies, is when they're starting to pick up a lot of the level 2 to level 3 stuff that's happening behind them. And you can see, watch Roquan's head pre-snap. He's not focused on only the cues on the man right in front of him. If he's got an assignment where he's wide of the formation in particular, like covering a running back who's split wide, he's looking to the other side of the field for threats. He's looking, how are these routes gonna cross? He's trying to figure out, okay, what combination is working here, and what spot's gonna give me the best chance to be there for either two routes or to erase a route that they're not thinking I can make a play on. And I'm what Roquan didn't really show up as much as in his own coverage statistics. I thought Queen in a lot of ways, showed up very well with what he did in 22, but love them playing together. And part of it is just Queen getting a more natural set of responsibilities as a chase and cleanup guy on that Will side, as opposed to being the primary block shedder as the Mike, who's got to get in there sometimes against a pulling guard. Nobody likes that. Sometimes is the first option for a right tackle who's trying to seal the edge on a power play. You just got multiple ways that you're going to have to shed a block, and it's going to be hard for you if you're Patrick Queen as the Mike linebacker, where it can be a lot easier as the Will to work off another player's movements.
Exactly. He needs to be a Will linebacker for definitely this year, but for the rest of his career, wherever he plays, he's not a strong linebacker. He's just not going to be very good at getting off of blocks and kind of stopping a running back in the hole. I mean, that's something that Roquan is very good at. Is just he can be that missile where he could just slam right into that running back. Queen's not that player, but he's a guy that he's got a ton of quickness and he's got good instincts. He can get in the backfield and tackle a guy for a loss, and that is those are good plays, and he play to his strengths. And those are the strengths of him. Don't put him at middle linebacker anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think he's done with the Ravens, but it'll be an interesting thing if in contract negotiations it comes up whether or not he's a Mike or a Will. Not with the Ravens, because obviously the Ravens are going to have him at Will, but any other team that he goes to. And he says, well, I can wear the green dot, I can be the Mike, I think it's could be more difficult for him to get the absolute top dollars out of the inside linebacker market, because he might not be a there are probably less teams, period, that want to keep a guy on the field for 3 downs now at the Will spot. That's normally the place where you exchange out for the dime safety that comes in. So if you're going to play with a dime back system, that's not ideal for Patrick Queen. And if he were to do such a thing, he'd want to be the green dot there, where he's a 2-down Will and a 1-down Mike. And Chris Board and some other players have been that kind of player for the Ravens, where they move over a slot to play that Mike role on 3rd down and have a safety drop in next to them, and so it really ends up being your 2-down Mike thumper who drops off the field for your dime back. I could see that, but it's hard for me to see a path to a huge contract here for Queen, given the inherent places that he's shown value as a Raven.
Right, exactly. Part of for Patrick Queen is a big thing for the Ravens is figuring out what you're going to do with Kyle Hamilton. Mm-hmm. And I personally, I think if you were to build a dime backer in a lab, it would come out looking like Kyle Hamilton. Mm-hmm. Great instincts. He can blitz. He's physical, and he's 6'4", and all of those things. It's just a perfect dime back. I mean, put him in the middle of the field, 12 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and dare a quarterback to throw in an intermediate zone around there is just asking for trouble. And I think probably they'll continue in the nickel this year, but I think they really ought to be trying to phase into a dime on most passing situations in 24 and beyond, and obviously in early downs figure out if Hamilton's a better strong safety or nickel corner. But I would love to see them move to more dime over the next year.
You on any time limitations here? Because I don't want to take you down this
No,
second rabbit hole. Okay, fantastic. So
no.
this rabbit hole number two is probably number
Mhm,
four or something today. But if you're trying to build a team economically defensively, having a dime linebacker rotation with a two down will, or even two one down wills. The Ravens did that with McLean and Ellerby for a couple of years, where they would play, first down McLean, second down and long Ellerby, and then third down a dime back.
mhm,
But anyway, you can build that a couple of different ways. But platooning at the weak side linebacker spot is as efficient as it gets in terms of per dollar value you get out of that spot. And I've the Ravens obviously know this because Ozzie Newsome has this extraordinary history of drafting dime backs over the years that he always knew that he could get for a sixth round pick. He get a very capable safety. I often say on this show that your third best coverage safety is almost always a better coverage player than your second best coverage inside linebacker. And they bring up those skills into the
mhm,
box. They understand what's going on behind them naturally because that's where they normally see it from. Is from the back
mhm,
end. And when Anthony Levine did that, or Haruki Nakamura, or Corey Harris would be another good one. Ralph Staten, he actually
mhm,
ended up playing on the back end a fair amount when he was at the team, or Anthony Mitchell, who played dime back for the Ravens for 01 primarily. It's just very exciting um, to get that kind of production out of a lot less dollars. And also, I think you end up with a lot less injury risk because your three down unicorn linebacker goes down. There's no solution for that other than to build a
right.
3-man platoon there.
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah, and they can be, yeah, middle round picks. Like I mean, we're probably seeing it a little bit now. They drafted Simpson in the third round, probably to be Queen, in all likelihood, be Queen's replacement. And um, you still have Geno Stone, who was a six round pick, and
Mm-hmm.
he'll if they do end up re-signing him, he's not going to make a lot of money, $2 or $3 million probably, or they'll go back to middle round safety to be the next rotation. So yeah, exactly. It is a great way to save money when especially if you're going to spend a lot of resources at corner and pass rush, which is, the high profile positions that, require those resources.
Yeah, or quarterback, say like so
Yeah, quarterback too.
definitely in that position.
I was just
So
thinking about the defense, but
yeah.
yeah.
Let's talk a little bit more about Queens 22 because I want to get through some of this. The tackling improved overall, but he still has a 16.5% career missed tackle rate. It improved to 14.2% in 22. That's still not good enough. And it's kind of unfortunate because it looked like he basically completely turned the corner at midseason. Now I want to get this right because PFF and PFR slightly differ on the missed tackle totals. But in a 5-game span, he had 1 missed tackle by PFF and 0 missed tackles by PFR, and that's over a 38 or 39 tackle stretch. So
Mhm.
that's remarkable for anybody to go 0 for 38. I mean, that's like if you play craps, that's a long craps roll without a 7 is what I've got to say about that. And sevens
Mhm.
happen about one time in 6, and that's about how often Patrick Queen misses tackles in his career. So it's actually a pretty good analogy in
Mhm.
this case. But that's a hell of a roll there to go as long as he did. And then unfortunately had a 4 missed tackle game that capped that off and did not tackle well the rest of the season. In fact, he had 11 misses the rest of the season for a 17.5% missed
Wow.
tackle rate down the stretch. So really sad to see that because it was a regression in a lot of ways to his career norms.
Yeah, yeah. It's something he's always struggled with. And it's at this point, you really wonder if you're just going to have to accept him he's going to miss tackles, no matter what, because it's something he's shown his entire career, and it's I can't put my finger on what it is. I think it's physicality. He's just not that. And sometimes a linebacker just has to be that missile and just put your head in there and just smack the ball carrier and knock him and drive through him. And he's never been that guy.
Yeah, I
So. Yeah.
I agree with that, and we see think I see more of the lack of physicality in the inability to shed blocks, which occasionally shows up. The other thing that happens in tackling is not a good form tackler. Does not use his arms well. And if you talk about two different guys who do it completely differently, Kyle Hamilton and him, Kyle Hamilton, his arms, you might as well have 8 of them. The way he tackles and the way they they hold on to a ball carrier and disadvantage him.
Mm-hmm.
Queen uses his pads and his shoulder a lot of times just to try and knock a player down, and he's not big enough to necessarily do that against all NFL players or on all plays. And some of those turn into good plays for the Ravens because you mentioned earlier in the show that there's different types of missed tackles. Oftentimes you can retract that ball carrier in a way that makes him a sitting duck for the next guy. It can even be more positive than that in terms of potentially causing a turnover, in terms of doing it in the backfield. Mm-hmm. Letting the quarterback escape is bad from a sack, but it's usually very good when the quarterback has to expend a lot of energy to avoid a sack, and he's often the best result is probably going to be an incomplete on those plays.
Sure, absolutely, yeah, and yeah, not all missed tackles are created equally, but yeah, obviously all those situations are kind of the best case missed tackle situations, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His most important contributions came as a pass rusher. You've talked about that a little bit earlier too. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things I really loved down the stretch was how he and Roquan were constantly playing games with the quarterback at the line of scrimmage. And there was a lot of one man in the A gap, one man back situations. And that wasn't necessarily the way they came, but sometimes it was. Mm-hmm. And so you would often have the Roquan would be up at the line of scrimmage. He'd drop the coverage and Queen would knife in from a different angle. And Roquan's presence obviously is upsetting how the linemen are thinking they need to make their blocks and the running back for that matter as well. And so you end up with an advantaged situation for Queen in terms of making his run into the backfield under the example I've kind of given. It did go both ways, by the way. Roquan got some advantageous positions out of Queen being in the A-gap.
Right, exactly. And it's great to see when teammates like that kind of have an understanding of mm-hmm. knowing where, which one's doing which, and they can play games with the offense because offenses rely on tendencies. Like probably before Roquan was there, they knew if Queen's at the line of scrimmage, he's going to be the one that's coming or something like that. And for them to play those games and make an offense guess, and they don't know who's coming and which one is staying, is great. Like I kind of think back to Ed Reed and Will Demps. I think they played rock paper scissors to figure out which one was going to blitz, and they could do they could do that because they did whatever one is going to blitz, the other one knows exactly where to go for the to be in the right position.
By the way, that's just a great moment in Ravens history. It's from that 2004 game against the Jets that was originally it's the dinosaur precursor to Sound FX, where all a bunch of players were mic'd up, and Scott Garceau and I think also the Jets play-by-play guy were mic'd up, but they had basically all people who were there at the stadium, no narration of it or anything otherwise, just a fantastic show. But seeing Demps and Reed play rock, paper, scissors on the field was hilarious. And it seemed like no matter who was going to win that, it was going to be Reed like blitzing on the play. but that's another point. And then the play everybody remembers in that is the play that really turned the game around, with the Jets leading 14-0. Lamont Jordan, a Maryland player, rolled out to the right on a halfback option. And of course the
knucklehead pass. Yep.
Herman Edwards says, "No, that's Ed Reed."
yeah. And I remember that. Yeah.
Loving it. It's amazing. There's, we know NFL Films is doing a great job when they imprint on our memories like this. I mean, it's not, it wasn't just a play in a game to us. It's all of that other stuff that went along with it, with the mic'd up, but they are part of our culture. They are in our heads at this point in terms of knowing how to do it.
I think it's really good to see. You see the players, as just as more people and personalities as opposed to
Yeah.
like I played Madden, like they're just just mindless, maneuver. They're just mindless, players in a video game, and they just move, automatically, almost kind of like robots without any. And being able to see the human side, that personality that they have, the bonds that they share as teammates, it's great to see. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very cool thing. If you have not seen that, it's probably out there on YouTube. That oftentimes somebody puts it up on YouTube and then they take it down and then they put it back up. Just take a look for it. 2004 Game of the Week, Ravens Jets, and you'll I'm sure find it. It's a great watch if you haven't done it.
Mhm.
What else do I have to say about Patrick Queen here? Do we miss anything before we get into good and
Um,
great?
no, I think I think we got it all. Yeah.
So, what's a good season
Almost.
from your perspective for Patrick Queen?
Yeah, I just said continue to build off the synergy that was built with him and Roquan at the end of the season. They both played, very well down the stretch and made a lot of plays. And you just want to you just want to see them kind of continue to build on that. And continue to improve as a defender in space, and try to become just a more sure tackler is important for him. And kind of what I would want to see is him just kind of take more chances, shooting gaps and guessing plays, uh, because you have such a solid, sure player in Roquan that can make the tackle or clean up if you disrupt the play. Just continue to kind of take those chances and make more plays in the backfield.
That's a great one. I should have had that on my list. I didn't. I have maintains 2022 coverage advances with better L2, L3 awareness. Pass rush rate is similar, but not necessarily quite as high. I had a very good pass rush rate this last year. Missed tackle rate, I want that to decline to the 11 to 13% range. I'm not unreasonable about this. At least I don't think I am. I think Roquan's was under 8% last year. Only a handful of linebackers in the NFL are quite that good, but ideally, Patrick Queen get his missed tackle rate under 10%, but I'll take 11 to 13 as terms of a step forward for this fourth year. Continues to benefit from Roquan. You covered that. Improves in most areas, but here's one of the problems: is that Patrick Queen has improved so much since his rookie year that incremental gains to who he is are going to be more difficult to come by. So it's definitely going to be harder to make the same kind of advance that he did each of his first 2 years in terms of the quality of his play. And I think a lot of this will depend on the overall quality of the Ravens defense. So he could be a Pro Bowl candidate. So let's hope he's a Pro Bowl candidate, because that probably means very good things for the defense as a whole. I don't think he will get there unless the Ravens as a defensive unit look not as good, but nearly as good as they did in the second half after Roquan arrived. And if they do, that's going to be very exciting for everybody. The Ravens will probably have multiple Pro Bowlers on that defensive side. Hamilton, Williams, Queen, Roquan, players like Owe, Humphrey might all be candidates in a season if they have a big defensive year as a whole.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
How about a great year?
I kind of just said turn into one of the top 5 to 10 weak side linebackers in the league. Have what would be Pro Bowl to even potentially second team All Pro season at linebacker. Multiple interceptions. Try to get up to 3 to 4 interceptions plus 4 to 5 sacks. Be a key reason why the Ravens are a top 10 run defense and pass defense. And last is make the Ravens think long and hard about letting him go in free agency. If he
There you go.
has a great season, make the Ravens really consider maybe using a franchise tag on him, or figuring out a way to keep him.
Yeah, I like yours in a lot of ways. Mine isn't nearly as eloquent. I say makes another unforeseen improvement, and I'm not picky about this. It could be a sharp increase in pressure rate, a tackle rate improvement, turnovers generated, block shedding. If he suddenly was able to figure that out in year 4. It'd be somewhat frustrating because the Ravens, then wouldn't have picked up the 5th-year option for him. But on the other hand,
Sure.
I'd love to see it. Love to see it happen.
Yeah.
Results in a top shelf season. The Ravens defense maintains its overall second half dominance, and with offensive improvements leads to a playoff run. He's considered for the Pro Bowl, but honestly, whether or not he makes it is not important to me. And he's rewarded with a big contract after the season. He's going to be an inside linebacker signing his first free agent deal, his second contract at age 24. I can't even tell you how unusual it is to even have a 25-year-old second contract player who is a potential star. It's very rare. So Tony Jefferson was a 25-year-old second contract player. For Queen to do it at 24, and he'll be 25 when the season starts, but still to be 24 when he signs his contract, it could be. It's a very big point on his side to go with some other questions that he's got to answer.
Yeah, like he's going to be in line for a decent contract, whether it's from the Ravens or another team. I think at this point it's most likely another team, unless he really just kind of elevates himself to just an invaluable piece that the Ravens can't afford to lose. But I mean, being so young, like he could sign a decent sized 3-year deal and still be 27, 28 on a potential third contract. So he could potentially get a couple bites of the apple if he plays well this year, and then just kind of continues in that direction over the next couple of years.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's a 3-year deal almost becomes a form of prove it deal for him if he thinks I'm worth more than 10 million, but 30 million over 3 years is what I'm getting as offers this time. He might actually decide he wants to shorten the term of his own contract from, say, 5 years, 50 million to 3 years, 30 million. If the team is amenable to that.
Right.
It's an interesting proposition for him to try and figure that out. Just a ton of fun talking with you about this, Brandon. We're going to make sure we have you on for at least a defense review during the season if you're up for it. I get less takers on defense, but I sense that you might be good with that.
Yeah, I'm fine. I'd be happy to. Yeah.
All right, outstanding. Tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Brandon Croxton 5 and season ticket holder, and I'll be at training camp for a few days as well. So, yeah, love to talk Ravens.
All right, outstanding, Brandon. Other folks out there, if you'd like to be on a Film Study short, there's still time. It's July. There's still a little bit dead time ahead of us. Hit me up with a DM on Twitter. I'll get right back to you about a potential show idea you have. Brandon, thanks again for coming on.
All right, thank you. Love to be here.
We'll talk to you next time on Film Study.